So, good morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on findings from the 2025 Perspectives on AI in Charity Sector Recruitment report. And it's great to have so many of you on the call with us. So my name is Jinsha and I'm Senior Research Executive at Charity Job, and I've been at Charity Job for a year and a half. At Charity Job, we use insights we gather from candidates and recruiters to create reports, blogs, and webinars that inform recruiters about recruitment trends and best practices for attracting top talent in the sector. And I've led this research with Lucy that we're discussing today, which looks at the impact of AI in charity sector recruitment. And I'll hand it over to Lucy.
Hi everyone, so my name's Lucy and I work at Charity Job as a Senior Research Manager, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this research with you all today.
Claire, who is Marketing Director, is also on the call with us, and so she'll be keeping an eye out for any questions and managing the Q&A session later on. So we're just going to switch off our cameras now for the remainder of the webinar, and we'll jump right in.
Thank you, Jinsha. So now I'm just going to go through a few bits of housekeeping before we kick off with the main part of this webinar. So firstly, you should be able to see our slides at the moment, and they should move through the webinar with us. But if they go out of sync at any point, then a sync to presenter button will appear in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, where you can use the arrows to flick through the slides. So you can press that button to sync the slides with us. As we mentioned, there will be some time for Q&A at the end of the webinar. Please use the Q&A function on Teams to leave your questions. If you're joining on the Teams app from your laptop or your computer, this should be on the banner at the top of your screen. But if you're joining from your phone, this should be in the bottom right-hand corner. And Claire's going to be keeping an eye out for questions, and we'll try to answer as many of these as possible at the end of the webinar. So don't worry if you don't get an immediate response. And then just to note, the webinar is being recorded, so please only share your questions if you're happy for them to be on the recording. And finally, we will share the recording as well as the slides and a link to download the Perspectives on AI in Charity Sector Recruitment report to everyone who registered later today. So as part of this research, we ran two surveys, so one with candidates and one with recruiters. So we're going to start today by talking you through findings from the candidate survey, and then we'll discuss findings from the recruiter survey. After that, we'll wrap up with some key insights and conclusion points, and then we'll have the Q&A after at the end. As you're all aware, we've been seeing AI develop really fast, and it's becoming increasingly clear that it's going to play a role in shaping the future of work. But today, there's not been much research on how AI is affecting recruitment, particularly in the charity sector. So that's why we conducted this research to help us get a better understanding of what's going on. And as mentioned, we conducted two surveys, so one of candidates and one of recruiters. And these surveys aim to see how these groups are using AI in the recruitment process and what they think about it. So we've published our research findings in the Perspectives on AI in Charity Sector Recruitment 2025 report. And today we're going to be talking you through the main findings from that report.
Thank you, Lucy. So firstly, going through the candidate survey findings. So we surveyed over 2,300 candidates to ask them about their views on AI, as well as how or if they use it in the job application process. So firstly, looking at the demographics of our respondents, 67% of our respondents were between the ages of 25 to 49, and 25% were between the age range of 50 to 75. And more than half were from white British background. 44% of our respondents worked in the charity sector, followed by 28% in the public sector and 24% in the private sector. And nearly 2/3 of our respondents were female. So with the rise of AI-tailored job applications in recent years, we asked candidates if they'd ever used AI to help them in the job application process. And we saw a fairly even split, with 46% saying yes and 52% saying no. And those who said no or don't know were then asked how likely they were to use AI in the future to help them with their job applications. And we saw that 26% said they were likely to use it in the future, and a quarter said neither likely nor unlikely, and nearly half said unlikely.
We went on to ask respondents who have used AI in the job search about the specific ways that they've used it. So they could select all that apply from a list of options, which were to help them create their CV, create their cover letter, to help with interview preparation, to help complete any pre-assessments or work samples. And then finally, they also had an other option where they could also leave a comment about how they've used it. So we found that the most common use was to help candidates create their cover letter. So that was selected by 41%. After that, 1 in 4 had used AI to help them with their interview prep, and 22% had used AI to help them create their CV. Only 6% selected other, but some of the other uses that they mentioned included using AI to help with spelling and grammar or to help write more coherently. And then some also used AI to research the role or the organisation. Those who worked in employment currently were also asked if they used AI for any part of their job. So 40% of respondents have used AI in their job, and 58% told us that they hadn't. We then kind of cross-analysed the use of AI at work with other variables in our data because we wanted to see if there were sort of any standout differences here between groups. And when we looked at the use of AI at work by seniority level, we actually saw that those who are in more senior level roles were more likely to have used AI at work compared to those in junior level roles. And we also saw that those aged 35 to 49 were more likely to have used AI in their role than any other age group.
And we were interested to see what candidates' opinions were on AI. So we asked them to rank how strongly they agreed or disagreed to some statements regarding the use of AI in the job application process and the future of AI. So the statements were as follows. I'm concerned about the future of AI. I'd prefer a recruiter to check my application rather than it being checked by AI. I feel it's harder to stand out on job applications because there's an increase in people using AI to tailor their job applications. Using AI increases my chances to do better in the job application process. And then finally, I feel there are a lack of job opportunities due to an increase in AI taking over jobs. And we saw that more than 2/3 of respondents agreed they were concerned about the future of AI. And although we can't say what the concerns are about, we did see some comments of AI taking over and AI replacing humans in the end of our survey when we asked candidates if they had any more thoughts regarding AI. So it might be that some concerns relate to this. And we saw that a further 80% agreed that they would prefer a recruiter to check their application rather than it being checked by AI, which could suggest that candidates might be more likely to trust the decisions made by recruiters when it comes to assessing their job applications and having that human element when it comes to reviewing them. And 60% felt that due to an increase in AI usage in job applications, they found it harder to stand out against other applicants. And 43% agreed that using AI increases their chances to do better in the job application process.
Thank you, Jinsha. So we then look further to see if there were any differences in those perspectives of AI between different groups. And we found there were some significant differences between those who currently use it at work and those who don't. So those who hadn't previously used AI at work expressed greater concerns about its impact than those who had, who were considerably more positive. So specifically, 77% of those who hadn't used it at work told us they were concerned about its future, compared to 57% of those who had used it. Those without prior experience were also more likely to agree that AI's increasing prevalence leads to fewer job opportunities, and they were also less likely to agree that using AI improves their chances in the job application process. So it seems that kind of having experience of using it at work correlates with a more positive view of those statements. And this might be that having kind of first-hand experience with AI provides a more clear understanding of AI's actual impacts and also its limitations. We also saw that responses to some of the statements varied by age and gender. So, first, looking at age, we saw that younger candidates, so those aged 16 to 24, were significantly more likely to agree that there's a lack of job opportunities due to an increase in AI taking over jobs. So, 61% agreed with that statement compared to a 32% average across all age groups. And then in terms of gender, we saw that females are slightly more concerned about AI being used by recruiters. So 82% agreed that they prefer a human recruiter to check their application rather than it being checked by AI. And that was compared to 77% of male respondents. So with this, it's possible that it might be related to some kind of concerns around biases in AI. So for example, I think some recent research by the University of Washington has actually found that some AI tools have gender and racial biases. So with AI models kind of favoring white male names.
And we also asked candidates to see if they were interested in developing their AI skills. And 79% said they were either extremely, very, or somewhat interested to develop their AI skills. And again, we also compared this with gender to see if there were any differences. And we saw that 54% of male were interested in developing their AI skills compared to only 39% of female. And looking at work sector breakdowns, 50% of those in the private sector said they were interested in developing their skills in AI, compared to 42% working in the charity sector and 35% in the public sector.
So we also explored whether candidates thought it was fair for them to use AI to help them with their job applications. So we asked them to rate their agreement with the statement, "It's fair to use AI to help with the job application process." So nearly half of respondents agreed that it is fair to use AI to assist them. Nearly a quarter of respondents neither agreed nor disagreed, and then 28% didn't think it was fair. And we looked into whether prior experience of using AI affected people's opinions, and we found a really big difference. So 75% of those who've used AI in the job search thought it was fair to use, compared to only 28% of those who haven't used it.
And at the end of our survey, we asked candidates whether they had any more final thoughts or comments they'd like to mention regarding AI. So we actually saw a mix of responses. So some positive comments refer to how AI helps sparks ideas and mentions of how it's a great tool to use to help communicate your skills and experiences more effectively in your CV and your cover letter. And some comments also refer to how AI can be helpful for neurodivergent individuals and those with dyslexia. However, there were some worries as well. So concerns were raised on the usage of AI by recruiters when it came to assessing applications, with fears of applications being assessed by AI which might have its own biases and errors, and qualified candidates being overlooked. And we also saw this in one of the statements earlier, where 80% agreed they'd rather have their application checked by a recruiter than AI. So now we'll move on to the findings from the recruiter survey. So we had a separate survey asking recruiters what their thoughts on AI were and how they use it in the recruitment process. So we shared the survey with recruiters who had logged in to the Charity Job Recruiter account at least once in the last 4 years, and we had responses from 97 recruiters. So as the response rate is quite low for the survey, the results discussed in the survey should be interpreted with caution, and further research is needed to understand how AI is being used by those recruiting in the charity sector. So we asked recruiters what cause the charity they worked at supported, and the top three were health and medical, housing and homelessness, and education and environment.
Thank you, Jinsha. So to start, we asked recruiters about their familiarity with AI, and 69% said that they were somewhat familiar, very familiar, or extremely familiar with it. And then 31% said they weren't familiar with AI. Next, we looked at whether recruiters were using AI to help with recruitment. So we found that 76% hadn't used AI, while 16% had. However, it's worth noting that while a large majority did report not using AI, it is possible that some recruiters might be using it without realizing. So that, for example, could be through their applicant tracking system or another recruitment tool that they're using. And then we then asked those who hadn't used AI if they'd be open to using it in charity recruitment in future. And only 15% said that they were definitely open to it, but a much larger group of 41% said that they were somewhat open. We went on to ask those who had used AI how they'd used it in the recruitment process. But I just want to say here that it's really important to keep in mind this is based on a very small number of responses. So these results absolutely need to be interpreted with caution. But the most common uses were writing job descriptions and creating interview questions. And our data also suggested that AI has been used more in the preparation stages of recruitment rather than for assessing kind of candidate skills. And we also found that those who have used AI started using it within the last year.
Thank you, Lucy. So similar to candidates, recruiters were also given some statements on AI and asked how much they agreed with these. So the statements were as follows. I'm optimistic about the potential of AI in recruitment. AI improves the hiring process. AI will revolutionize how charities hire. The impact of AI on charity recruitment will be minimal. AI could bring negative consequences in recruitment. And finally, AI creates more job opportunities. We found that a staggering 77% agreed that AI could bring negative consequences to recruitment. This could mean that recruiters are more cautious about the use of AI in recruitment. And 35% of respondents disagreed that AI improves the hiring process. And more than half disagreed that the impact of AI on the charity recruitment will be minimal, meaning that these recruiters might expect some sort of change in recruitment brought by AI. And more than half disagreed that AI creates more job opportunities. We also asked recruiters how much they agreed or disagreed with the number of statements on the impact of AI on fairness and diversity of recruitment. So I won't go through each statement, but I'll highlight some of the standout insights. But this presentation will be shared with you after the webinar, so you can go through the slides in more detail in your own leisure. So 46% of recruiter respondents agreed that AI can help make less biased decisions, even though 40% disagreed with the statement AI can help increase the diversity of the pipeline. And we saw that 56% of recruiters agreed that AI makes the recruitment process quicker, meaning that it might be helpful in saving time. And nearly half said it makes the recruitment process easier.
Thank you, Ginger. So we also asked all of our recruiters, so they're both those who had used AI and hadn't used AI, where they thought it could be beneficial in recruitment. So the most commonly selected answer was writing job descriptions, which was selected by 76%, and that was followed by creating interview questions and then scheduling interviews. And we also asked which areas of recruitment they thought AI shouldn't be used for. So final candidate selection was the top concern, selected by 90%, and that was followed by ethical decision making and then offer negotiation. So what's really interesting here is that views are quite mixed on using AI for initial candidate screening and CV and cover letter screening. So quite similar proportions felt that it could be beneficial for these and that it shouldn't be used for these. So this kind of contrast highlights quite a key point. So while there's some openness to AI in some areas of the recruitment process, particularly those initial stages, there's more hesitation and more kind of mixed views in other areas, especially as we move closer to the final hiring decision. So that kind of brings us on to the question, do recruiters actually trust AI? So as we just saw on that last slide, there are really kind of mixed views about using AI for screening, which is a really key part of the recruitment process. So when we asked recruiters if they trusted the recommendations and decisions made by it, the results were actually quite striking. So only 11% said that they would be likely to trust its recommendations. 47% said that they wouldn't trust them, and then 42% were on the fence.
And we were interested to see what recruiters' thoughts were on candidates using AI. So we asked them the following question. If you suspect a candidate had used AI to help them with their job application, would this influence your decision to put them through to the next stage of the recruitment process? We saw that for 35% of our respondents, it would discourage them to put a candidate through. And more than half said it might influence their decision, but they would still consider their application. This means that heavily AI influenced applications are more at risk of possibly being rejected by recruiters. And again, finally, we asked recruiters for any more last comments or thoughts regarding AI. And similar to the candidate one, we saw a mix of responses. So some positives referred to how AI is a great tool when it comes to arranging interviews and processing forms, and this helps streamline the recruitment process. And we also saw this earlier as well, where the third most selected answer for what recruiters thought AI would be most beneficial in was interview scheduling. However, concerns were raised of how recruiters were able to notice heavily AI influenced applications, which sometimes lacked personality and authenticity. And some recruiters mentioning that AI takes out the human factor of assessing a candidate and could possibly increase bias when it comes to reviewing applications.
Thank you, Ginger, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. So we're now coming towards the end of the main part of this webinar. So we wanted to highlight some standout insights from both of our surveys. So looking at the candidate survey first, we found that nearly half of candidate respondents have used AI to help with their job applications. And while half of candidates believed it's fair to use AI in the job application process, 28% disagree. We also found that 40% of candidates have used AI at work, and those who have a much more positive outlook on it. And finally, a striking 80% said that they'd rather a recruiter to check their application rather than it being checked by AI.
And looking at the standout findings from the recruiter survey, over three-quarters of respondents agreed that AI could bring negative consequences to recruitment. And we saw that writing job descriptions was the highest selected answer when asked where AI could be most beneficial in. And nearly half of respondents said they don't trust the recommendations or decisions made by AI. And finally, 47% of recruiter respondents disagreed that candidates should be able to use AI in their job applications. And of these, 92% said it might influence their decision to put a candidate through to the next stage of the job application process.
Thank you, Jinsha. And then to conclude, we wanted to leave you with some final points. So when it comes to AI in recruitment, there's a real mix of opinions. So both candidates and recruiters highlighted many of the positives and negatives of AI. We found that candidates, so especially those with experience of using it at work, are much more likely to be on board with it, whereas recruiters are taking a more cautious approach. However, they do think that AI could be beneficial for some kind of more administrative side of their jobs, so helping them to streamline their recruitment process, for example. And a crucial point is that AI's effectiveness depends on how it's used. So both recruiters and candidates agree that AI should be used as a tool to assist us, but not to replace us. And finally, it's important to remember that AI is constantly evolving. So this means that the opportunities and risks associated with it will continue to change.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and we'll now hand over to Claire for the Q&A.
Morning, everyone. Yes, so I'll start from the bottom. So the first question we had was, is there a reason why so many people said they feel it's harder to stand out on job applications because there's an increase in AI being used?
Thank you. Yeah, I can answer this one. So we can't really pinpoint as to why candidates might have felt it's harder to stand out on job applications, but one reason could be that if more and more people are using AI to tailor their applications, candidates might not feel they stand out from other applicants who are also using AI. And another possible reason could be that maybe for candidates who don't use AI or aren't familiar with it, they might feel that it's a bit harder to stand out or compete against other applicants who may have used AI to tailor their applications, and they may feel their application might not be perfected as much compared to someone who's used AI to tailor the application. Yeah, I hope that's helped.
Thank you, Jinsha. There's another question. Is there a reason why those in junior positions are more hesitant to use AI? That's quite an interesting one, because you'd assume that the sort of younger generation would be very open to it.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely was quite a surprising kind of finding from our research. And yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, we did see that those, I think it was in the 16 to 24 age category, they were more likely to agree that I think there's less job opportunities compared to those in other age categories. Obviously, we can't say for certain what the reason is for that, but I guess it's possible that it might be because AI is kind of typically used in entry level or junior roles where they might have kind of more administrative tasks which can be supported by AI. So that could partly explain why those in junior positions are more hesitant to it. But yeah, we don't have a definite answer for that.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Someone said that we mentioned that recruiters could be using AI without realizing it. So what would some examples of that be?
Thank you. And yeah, absolutely. Because AI is becoming kind of like more increasingly integrated into these everyday recruitment tools, sometimes it's not always immediately obvious how it's being used. So applicant tracking systems are a really good example. So while Charity Jobs applicant tracking system, Charity Job Recruiter doesn't currently use AI, we are seeing lots of other recruitment tools and other common applicant tracking systems using it. So some examples that we've seen in these tools are things like having kind of AI assistants or chatbots to automate maybe that initial candidate screening or to answer candidates kind of common questions. Other AI tools that are becoming more widespread kind of tools to help you write your job description or to create interview questions. And we're also seeing tools which can maybe help you summarize CVs and things like that. And then kind of other tools which are quite commonly used as well, but less kind of recruitment focused, which you could be using are things like grammar checks. So obviously not all grammar checks are AI, but a lot of tools might be AI powered, as well as some kind of calendar and scheduling assistance as well. So yeah, I guess in that way, it is possible that a recruiter might be using it to help them with that job posting without kind of fully recognizing that is fueled, powered, I suppose, by AI. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Could you provide any advice for the ethical and fair use of AI among candidates? I mean, I think some things were mentioned throughout the presentation, but what I would say is actually I was listening to the TA Disruptors podcast, and they were interviewing some people who have polled this. And the advice that they were giving is that every organisation is individual. So if you want to be a forward-facing organisation, definitely don't ban the use of AI. And if you are using it, you need to have a policy or guidance which you need to publish or communicate to candidates with giving examples about what successful use of AI looks like. So, for example, you just need to be very clear about what your expectations are. So, we will accept cover letters that have been assisted by AI. So it is up to that individual organisation. There's another question here. What are your opinions on having an AI tool to assess any initial CVs or cover letters, especially if you work for a large organisation or if you get a lot of applications for a job post?
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So I think there are quite a few factors to consider here. So I think one positive of having an AI tool to screen a candidate's CV or cover letter is that for I guess for any large organizations or a job role that has hundreds of applications, it would be useful to have a tool which summarizes each candidate or can filter out candidates which might not be suitable for the role. So, for example, candidates who have none of the essential criteria, if they're excluded, it means that recruiters can spend more time reviewing potential candidates. However, I guess AI tools itself might have its own errors and biases. So solely relying on that to assess candidates, it can be really dangerous, and it might not be worth it, especially if you accidentally miss a good potential candidate. And I think although it might be more time consuming, it might be worth it to have recruiters or hiring managers checking through each applicant to decide and filter out good potential candidates. And I feel having that human judgment can select better quality candidates than AI could. However, I do think using AI to help you arrange interviews or sending out automated emails, things like that, I think that's where it could be more useful in.
Thanks, Jinsha. Sorry, there are loads of questions coming through, so I'm just trying to make sure I haven't missed any out. Is there anything recruiters could do to ensure we don't exclude quality candidates?
Oh, this is a good one.
Oh.
So I think one way to approach this might be when it comes to reviewing CVs or answers to screening questions, is to have a focus on what skills and experiences they bring, which could be useful for the role, rather than looking at the way they've structured their sentences or presented their CV. And we've got a lot of advice about how to do this on our blogs and website, from writing skills-based and inclusive job descriptions to using screening questions in an effective way, and how other assessment methods can help further down the recruitment process. So yeah, I think having a focus on the key skills that a candidate brings can be helpful.
Thanks. There was a question asking if in the research tool, were there any specific AI tools or services that were actually named by any of the recruiters?
So no, there weren't, and I think that's partly because it was really such a small number of recruiters who were actually using AI in the recruitment process, and those who had it did say that they were using it to help them write job descriptions and create interview questions, but no, they didn't cite the exact tools. So yeah, I mean, we spoke about some of the tools that we've seen with kind of tools like applicant tracking systems, but obviously there's a big influence of things like ChatGPT as well. But yeah, we can't say for certain what these tools are. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Is it the general consensus that it's more acceptable to use AI in the recruitment and selection process from a candidate point of view? Oh, sorry, you go, Lucy.
Sorry, you go, Claire.
Again, I was just saying, I think it depends on age groups. I think if candidates, I think they're assuming that recruiters are using it in the selection process. So therefore it's fair game for them to be using it as well. That's sort of anecdotally things I've heard on podcasts. So I don't think there was any specific research that came out of this. Was there, Lucy?
No, there wasn't. I mean, we saw there were quite mixed views in candidates. I mean, around half of candidates think it's fair to use, but no, kind of nothing else really to say there, I don't think.
Thanks. And I think we might have to make this the last question. There are loads coming in thick and fast, and what we'll do is respond to everyone with a written a written document with all of your questions and answers into them. But someone has asked, taking into consideration people who use AI to help with their job application, should we consider scrapping cover letter and supporting statements and replace it with a different method of getting information from candidates? I'll sort of go first with this, Lucy and Ginger, unless you have anything to
Sure.
add. I guess if you've got any upfront supporting statements in whatever method you're presenting that, whether that you're asking for a cover letter, a CV, screening questions, there will be an opportunity for candidates to use AI to help them and assist them in their responses. The other things that you can do, you could, but this is kind of further up the recruitment line. You can do psychometric testing, and that might help. But that's kind of the process where you're down to sort of 3 or 4 candidates, so that you actually want to sort of test them on their skills. I don't know if you have anything to add on that one, Lucy.
Not particularly, more just kind of what you were sort of getting at there, Claire. I think, it's quite difficult in that initial stage, but I guess it just perhaps reinforces, like you were saying with psychometric testing, that maybe you should take a kind of multiple approach of assessing candidate skills. So, things like work sample tests, obviously they can be supported by AI as well, but if you kind of look at the skill set from a number of different angles, obviously not for every candidate, or that would be hugely time consuming for them, but when you get to a smaller group of candidates who you're carefully considering, I think just testing those skills in different ways can perhaps help you really understand who has the skills you're looking for. But yeah, it is difficult. So yeah, nothing else to say there, I think, from me, Claire.
Okay, and final question. Would you recommend asking candidates to declare they've used AI in an application or for a task? I think this goes back to a previous answer, which is, as an organisation, it's entirely up to you, but I think you need to give context as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So, if you want to encourage the use of AI and you're using it in your daily jobs, then you can't. I think it's ethically wrong to exclude people who are using it, but it is entirely the organisation's point of view. So with that, we'll wrap up now. But as I said, we'll respond to everybody's questions when we send an email out with the recording of the webinar later today.
So thank you, Claire. So yeah, it's time to wrap up, and thank you all so much for attending today. And it's been great to have so many of you joining us. So we will be sharing a copy of the Perspectives on AI in Charity Sector Recruitment report, the webinar slides, and the webinar recording later today. Also check out our blogs on our website on the latest trends in the charity sector and in recruitment. And over the coming months, we will be hosting more webinars, so please keep your eyes peeled for more information on these. Thank you very much, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.